All right, let's talk Kansas City Chiefs. Look, it has been a kind of a quiet offseason for Kansas City, but a really good one. And we've covered a lot of the moves they made, but there's an under the radar addition, even for the Chiefs this offseason, that not a lot of people are focusing on. That I think when you dive into the data ahead of training camp, you, the Chiefs fans, are going to really like this kid. We'll break down that data for you in just 1 second. But first, I am Nick, that is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, we've covered a lot of the great additions the Steelers made through the rookie class. Of course, Josh Simmons at the top of the tackle position. Brashard Smith seems like a great find. We've gone through another guys, of course, in the middle rounds. But there's one guy, one undrafted free agent that draws some very interesting attention. And look, whenever you have any undrafted free agent, there's always some big concerns, some big reasons that he didn't go drafted, and this player is no different. But when you look at the potential of what he could be and the fit in Kansas City, there's reason to be excited, especially when you consider the developmental ramifications. So we're going to talk about former Washington State Cougar offensive tackle Esa Pole today. Now, Pole got a lot of coverage right before the draft. It's very interesting that the Kansas City Chiefs used one of their final pre-draft interview processes on Pole. So this is not just a guy they stumbled upon and just said, hey, we got him, we need a camp body. They targeted him through the pre-draft process. They didn't select him, of course, probably because they selected Simmons in the first round, but they knew they wanted to go after this kid, and they went out and got him in the undrafted free agent cycle. So Pole was a 2-year starter at Washington, and basically year 2 kind of exploded, right? First year, not so much. 2-year, massive leap. And when you look at his numbers, strictly from a pass blocking perspective, Pole is not a good run blocker, or at least wasn't for Washington State. Now, look, part of it is the Washington State offense, right? They don't run the football the way 99.9% of teams run the ball. But when you look at it just from a performance analytical perspective, not a great run blocker, really good pass blocker. Let's pull up the chart here to highlight what I'm talking about. This is using the pass blocking efficiency metric, courtesy of PFF, one of our favorite metrics to evaluate because it factors in a bunch of things. It's kind of a good way to compare apples to apples when you look at prospects. So look at the top first-round offensive linemen going from left to right. You can see Josh Simmons, Kelvin Banks, Josh Connerly Jr., and Armand Membao. And then, of course, you've got on the far right, Esa Pole. And you can look at all of these guys and you say, all right, well, Josh Simmons stands out above the pack. We've covered that a lot. Simmons was a great get by the Kansas City Chiefs, from Ohio State at the end of the first round. But when you look at the other three guys, Banks, Connerly Jr., and Membao, Esa Pole is right there. In fact, he's actually even a little bit better in terms of pass blocking efficiency than Kelvin Banks. That should really get your eyes up right there. You're talking about an undrafted free agent from an analytical perspective, from a pass protection perspective, being that good compared to first rounders. Everyone looks at an offensive tackle as a first rounder, saying pass protection, number one. That's what matters. And from just a pure unbiased data perspective, Esa Pole, with the exception of Simmons, was as good, maybe even a little bit better, some of these other first round talents. Now, you talk about a find in the undrafted free agent phase. This is pretty awesome, folks. But let's go into our next chart here to take it and really compare Pole to Josh Simmons from a pass blocking grade perspective. We're going to switch up metrics a little bit because Simmons was obviously better from an efficiency perspective. But when you look at just pure PFF pass blocking grade, and the reason I want to highlight this chart is because Simmons is a great pass blocker. But despite that, Pole actually graded out higher in 2024 as a pass protector for Washington State than Josh Simmons. Now, I'm not saying that Pole is better than Simmons as a pass blocker or as a prospect or even remotely close. He's not. But the reality is, if you just look at pass protection, Pole performs at a high level. And one of the things we always talk about when it comes to undrafted free agents is, do they do one thing extremely well? Do they do one thing well? If you're going to be an undrafted free agent guy, you got to have a niche. You got to have a role to fit on a team. And when you look at pass protection, this is what you're talking about with Pole. He is extremely good at it. He is a first-round guy in 2024 when it comes to pass protection. Now, why did he fall out of the draft? He's not a good run blocker, and he was really only a 2-year contributor. There's only 1 year's worth of data, right? So there's, and obviously everyone nitpicks, foot placement, hand placement, how good are his hips, all that kind of stuff, right? So there's a lot of things to nitpick about. But the reality is, from a pure performance perspective, he was a first-round pass blocker, again, with only 1 year of experience, not a good run blocker, and that's why he slid out of the draft. But the data shows, the productivity shows that he is today a really good pass protector. I think he could slide into the NFL and be a good pass blocker day one while he develops into an NFL offensive lineman completely around the horn here. Again, Pole is not expected to start. We're not expecting him to even play. But we talk about a developmental guy. This is what you're talking about for the Kansas City Chiefs, especially for an offensive line that's really trying to figure out long-term solutions, right? You look at the Chiefs last year, their worst performing, according to PFF, group of their entire roster, run blocking, rushing, coverage grade, run defense grade, tackling, passing, whatever it may be, was pass blocking, right? By far their worst performing group. And of course, Chiefs fans, not surprised to hear that. You saw the issues they had over the course of the season, especially at the offensive tackle position. This is a guy in Pole that could, I'm not saying he will, but could develop into a quality player. Worst case scenario, he's a great depth piece who has to slide into a backup role if someone goes down with an injury and Patrick Mahomes doesn't get killed. This is also a guy at Pole, not a lot of penalties either. Love to see that, of course, again, for a potential depth piece. And there's a chance he can develop, if he can become a quality run blocker, into a starting caliber tackle. And if you get that from the Kansas City Chiefs, you're talking about a massive steal, a high value move. These are kind of the long-term thinking, the long-term planning that I think will allow the Chiefs to continue their dynasty. It's all about Mahomes. It's all about, what you put around the quarterback. And you look at pass protection, wasn't up to snuff last year. Simmons looking good, looking healthy. He'll be a huge upgrade. And I look at Esa Pole as a guy who could be a critical depth piece and potentially evolve into a quality player in his own right. All right, Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of this. But first, Chiefs fans, in the comment section below, talking undrafted free agents, of course, talking Pole here. So let me ask you this question. Who is, in your opinion, the greatest undrafted free agent in franchise history? A lot of different ways you could go with this. I'm really curious, though, what you guys have to say. Only pick one, though. Only allowed one. Who is the greatest undrafted free agent in Kansas City Chiefs history? Let us know in the comment section below. And while you're down there, make sure you sign up for our weekly newsletter, courtesy of the Substack platform. 100% free, doesn't cost you anything. We just have additional content for you guys. We even highlight the comment of the week, so if you have a great comment, you may find yourself in the weekly newsletter. So again, make sure you sign up for it. There's a link in the description box below, 100% free of charge. But Mize, over to you now. What are your thoughts on this latest out of Kansas City?
Yeah, Nick, I really like this guy the more I look at him. I think he is a really great get for the Chiefs here. And I think you hit on something. You say a few, buzzwords in here that I think absolutely apply to this guy. You say developmental, you say lack of data. Of course that is, because this is a guy who 5 years ago, he wasn't even playing football. This is a guy who never played football before, starts to learn a little bit and then comes into Washington State, plays a lot in that 2023 season, probably still trying to learn the ropes of the game. How many people do you know that are professional or like, the best of the best at their career after only doing it for 5 years? I don't think that many. So this guy still has a ton of room to grow. I think there's going to be a lot of development going on. And we're already seeing from year one to year two, where he played 578 snaps in 2023, then bumped that up to 861 snaps in 2024, and we see what happens. In just that few 1,300, 1,400 snaps there, this guy went from 40s across the board in his grades to having an 85.8 pass blocking grade, being one of the more elite pass blockers when it comes to the college football realm. And we talk about this on this show all the time. People see guys, people see players, and they don't, dive into the background. They don't dive into everything and, figure out what's going on. They think they're, and we say this all the time, like Madden players. You get your undrafted free agent rookie grade, and that's all you're ever going to be. You don't ever get any better. You don't ever get any worse. And that's just not true. And for a guy who really hasn't played but like 4 years of football, I think this guy has major potential to develop and grow into a really, really strong player. Now, is this guy going to be, top of his game this season and be this permanent starting left tackle, right tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs? No, of course not. It's going to take some time, but I think this is a guy I would absolutely keep my eye on as far as developmental go, because you see when you look at PFF, their grades, they're really interesting because a few really high grades or a few really low grades can skew your score a lot sometimes. But you look at Pelé in this 2024 year, you got one, two, three, I'd say four, five, six, I'd say almost 7 grades, 7 games where he graded out at 80 plus when we're talking about the pass blocking grade potential. And then he's got, 3 more games there in the high 70s as well. So this guy doing really, really great stuff every single game, not just a couple of high games skew his score very well. This guy was actually an incredibly solid, pass blocker, and he got a little bit better every single game. You look at the last game of the season, capped it off with a big 88.1 pass blocking grade. His actual highest grade of the season was at the end of the year in the bowl game versus Syracuse. So you love to see that. A guy, it seems like he's getting better as the season progresses. So for Pole, a guy with this size, 6'7", 320 pounds, guy's an absolute monster. He's coming into his own. We see he went from absolute crap in 2023 to a really bona fide top tier pass blocker in 2024. I think a couple years in this Chiefs system, I say about 2026, 2027, this guy is going to be ready to step in and be a top tier tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's got the body. He's already learning very, very quickly. Someone who can have a 40-point jump in their PFF score in just 1 year. I think that's really, really impressive here by Pele. So this is a guy, while we go into training camp preseason, just watch. Let's see this year, and then let's see what he looks like next year as well. I guarantee you, you compare those grades, you see what he did. This is going to be a guy to make a massive jump. And I think in the coming years, this is going to be a guy we're going to be talking about that this was the biggest steal that the Chiefs has. I know everyone says Simmons, a great pickup, a great steal, and we think he is as well, but he was a first round guy. If you get a guy like this, an Esa Pole, who's an undrafted free agent, and he becomes a solid starter, now that's a steal. That's a big one, and that is another quality move by the Kansas City Chiefs.
And you talk about the long term, you're talking about taking a big leap after his rookie season. It's interesting that that perfectly coincides, if you're talking about a 2-year developmental cycle, to the ending of their two right tackles contracts, Wanya Morris and Jawan Taylor. Both will be free agents in 2027. So you talk about lining up perfectly with a potential breakout development with Pole after a year or two in the Chiefs system. The Chiefs are going to need to evaluate at that exact same time where they're going to spend money at the tackle position. If Pole's ready, if he continues to develop, he'll slide in perfectly at a massive discount. Now, look, he's an undrafted free agent. Expectations are low. He may not even make the team. That's all fair, right? All those comments are very fair. But when you look at the fit, you look at what he's good at, and you look at the Chiefs' salary cap in terms of scheduling situation, this is an ideal situation for Esa Pole and an ideal fit for the Kansas City Chiefs. Definitely a young prospect to keep an eye on.